its beauty is actually very doubtful.
I'm really losing. I don't understand the meaning at all of this question. I'm very, very sorry. Can you please say it again in
Uh,
another way,
well,
perhaps?
this is a exact translation.
I understand that, but
So
I don't understand it. What can I say? Can you read it again, please?
yeah, yeah.
Read it
So
again.
the person obviously is
No,
struggling
I don't need
with.
you to. I don't want you to interpret it. I need you to say their words again.
Okay, I have problems with such characteristics as beautiful and gorgeous while I'm doing visualization.
Okay, stop, stop,
This
stop, 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 stop. Beautiful when I'm doing visualization. Okay, keep going. Then.
Yes, this kind of things is very subjective, and when you see a strange green lady, its beauty is actually very doubtful.
Okay, sure. Like anything. Of course, I agree with you. Ridiculous to think of a green lady. I totally agree. It's all used what we're used to, isn't it? If you're brought up as a Russian and you see one of your nice Russian pictures, you'll call that beautiful. If an Aboriginal sees one of their weird, unusual pictures, they'll call that beautiful. Of course, it's subjective. I agree with you. Of course, it is. But it's a language. It's a language. It's a visual language. So of course it's coming from the tradition of Buddhists, coming from the Tibetans, which came from India. So they're carrying on their lineage. So if we want to learn that language, I can't just, if I've never seen Russian art before, Russian religious art, and I'm an Australian and I'm a Catholic, and I come along, of course it won't be beautiful to my eyes because I'm not familiar with it. That's all. I'm not familiar with it. But when I start to decide, I'll open my mind to Russian art. I'll understand the theories, understand where it's coming from, the history of it. I will start to open my mind and I will start to learn that language and I will appreciate it. So it's up to whether you want to. It's up to whether you decide you like the Buddhist approach. You've got a teacher maybe. They talk about meditating on green Tara. It's up to you to decide to learn that language, which means you have to start with the wish, with the thought, not to be stuck in your own views. Of course it's subjective, but we can change our minds. So it's up to you to decide. And then, because in the end, the more we realize that our mind can decide to do anything, and everything is based on how we see things. What subjective means is based on the viewpoints we have. So we've got to see our minds quite subtly. So my first looking at maybe Russian art, if I'm not used to it, I'll have aversion to it. It doesn't fit my picture, which means my attachment's not getting what it wants. And that's usually what we call subjective. It is what we're familiar with, but then we get stuck. Oh, I don't like that Russian art. No, I don't like that Russian art. Then I'll never like it. I'll never see it as beautiful. So we can change our minds. So it's up to whether you want to. And to notice the aversion in the mind, because of course it's not familiar. It sounds ridiculous, seeing some green lady. I agree with you. Not to mention seeing some heavy-duty, wrathful dude with big horns and 47 legs and arms. I mean, that's like the most weird thing we've ever seen in our whole life. I agree with you. So it's up to whether we want to learn that language and get it's a tough one. I agree with you. Go on, next.
Next question is, after achieving which state of shamatha, you can try to meditate on emptiness?
Oh, you start immediately. With zero shamatha, you can start. You start with what you've got. You start with what you've got. You don't wait till you've got that. You start now with no shamatha. To the best of your ability, you start right now with any gross level of conceptuality that you've got, and to some degree, whatever little bit of focus you've got, and you start thinking about it this second as soon as we talk about it. Then, so as you progress and deepen your concentration, as you progress listening to your teachings, so deeper and so ever more deeper will be your insights. You don't wait till you've got it. Oh my goodness, no. You start where you are. This is really crucial. It's a good point. Next.
Next question is about Vajrasattva practice. Can you recite mantras without taking the layperson vows and taking refuge?
I understand.
Or in this case, it's kind of fake.
No, I understand.
Yes, will it still be effective?
I understand. First of all, everything's a question of degree, isn't it? So the very first level of practice, as we've been talking all the time, and as I like to call it, junior school and high school, which is the wisdom wing, which is all the Theravadan part of the path, which is the first stages of the Lam Rim. That's where we take refuge, and then we take the 5 layperson vows. So that enables us to do various things. Then we go to the next level and we take the bodhisattva vows, which is much more profound, but they're based upon the lay vows and the bodhisattva vows. So the lay vows are to protect us from harming others, and that's got nothing to do with Tantra. There's no permission or not permission there to do anything about Tantra. That's got nothing to do with it, because Vajrasattva is Tantra. So the next level, bodhisattva vows, that now is more to do with helping others. Still got nothing to do with Tantra. It's got nothing to do with Vajrasattva. Then we enter into Tantra. Now it happens to be there are various levels of tantric practices, and there are various levels of permissions that are given to these different levels of practice. So it happens to be there's in one of the levels of Tantra, there are 4 main levels. One, they call it action Tantra, whatever. The practices we do, say, of Tara, Chenrezig, Manjushri, Vajrasattva, they are all the certain levels of these practices that are in Tantra. And anybody can say them. You don't need permission to say the mantra. You're allowed to do those because you don't need to have special permissions in order to do them. There are some levels of Tantra, such as Vajrayogini, that you cannot do until you've received initiation. And you can't receive initiation until you've taken the tantric vows, which is what you get in the ceremony. And you can't take tantric vows until you've taken bodhisattva vows. And you can't take bodhisattva vows until you've taken lay vows. So they're all related to each other. But there are some practices in Tantra that you can do without the permission. But of course, when you take the empowerment, it makes it more powerful for you, especially when you receive it from your Lama. It makes it more powerful. So we can do Vajrasattva without permission. We can do Tara, Chenrezig, and several others without permission. But if you want to take initiation into Vajrasattva, an empowerment into Vajrasattva, then that means you must, and it will usually be in the ceremony. If you haven't done any refuge, any bodhisattva vows before or lay vows, in the ceremony you will first have to take refuge, then you'll take the lay vows, then you'll take the bodhisattva vows, and then you will do Vajrasattva. But only tantric vows are only at the highest stage of Tantra. They call it highest yoga Tantra. It's only then that you take tantric vows. But you can't have an empowerment in any Tantra at all unless you've got bodhisattva vows. So that's the way, the way the evolution of it is. I hope that's clear. What's next?
Next question is also about Vajrasattva practice.
Uh-huh.
I feel some rejection, but not against the mantra itself, but against the language barrier. I can accept that the mantra works. I just have a problem with the compatibility of 2 cultures. As far as I understand, the main purpose of mantras is in the ways that it affects the mind. I really like the idea of Russification of Dharma, because when Dharma came to Tibet... I really
like the idea of what?
Russification making it Russian.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because when Dharma came to Tibet, Tibetans made it more Tibetan.
That's obviously. Right, exactly. No, it's exactly the same point as we discussed before about the Green Lady, isn't it? Or it's exactly the same before as we discussed about any viewpoints. The mind is the brain. It's what we're familiar with, whether we call it Russian, whether we more broadly call it materialism, whatever the label is. We all get brought up with various viewpoints. They're called culture. They're called ways of seeing things. And naturally, we get attached to that viewpoint. And then we hear anything else that's different, we hear it as weird. So we often have aversion to it. That's always the obstacle. That's everybody's mind. That's why, again, if we try and steady our minds down and realize that art, a picture of Green Tara, a Russian icon, an Aboriginal painting, they're all just expressions of a certain human being with a certain way of seeing things. So we've got to spread our mind wide open and realize all these are just space. They're just different ways of presenting things. So we've got to have a wide open mind and a wish. So if we like Buddhism, then we need to, it's like I said before about Tara, or even the viewpoints, we need to open our minds to it. Fortunately, for in my case, and some of you perhaps if you know Lama Zopa or His Holiness the Dalai Lama, how unbelievably kind they are that they have learned English. Learned English. For you guys, they haven't learned Russian probably, but how fortunate they've spoken English. That's a common language now. It's incredible. Some of my friends have Lamas who don't speak a word of English, so they have been forced to learn Tibetan. But how fortunate. Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa started from day one learning English. So it's like so fortunate. And then the other thing is this: Lama Yeshe had this incredible ability. I happened to edit his teachings. So when I listened to his teachings and I realized back in the late 60s, early 70s, Tibetans were so medieval, and that's not being rude. They kept their culture so intact. That was the benefit of no one climbing over the mountains to go to Tibet. It didn't get degenerate. But it's like, when Lama Zopa first taught, it was exactly the same as they would have talked in medieval times, with those mental constructs, with those ideas. I mean, it's so fascinating. And I know when I heard Lama Zopa for the first time at my first teaching, a 1-month Lamrim teaching in 1976, I didn't understand a word he said. I heard the words, but it was so arcane, so abstract, so foreign to me. But Lama Yeshe, he had this amazing ability. The moment he started learning English, his English was crazy. He had no grammar, but it was so intuitive. And it was like he was born a hippie. He just knew how to talk using concepts that spoke to us. That was why he was so powerful. When I edit his books, I can't believe his kindness, But so, okay, then not all the lamas are like that. Some of them still speak Tibetan and don't learn our language. So it's up to how much we want what they've got to give us. It's up to us how much we want what they have got to give us, I mean, look at His Holiness, so modern how he talks, his whole way of constructing, he's so modern, it's marvelous. But that's up to us. And I realized that when I first heard the teachings, I can't expect these lamas to spoon feed me. I've got to learn this stuff. I've got to learn the proper way of hearing things. I studied the philosophy for a couple of years in the very traditional classical way they study it, and I had to really learn that, to leap into that language, and then we are able to translate it into our own culture, into our own words. We can't just throw it out and make up new things. That's really insulting. But that's our job. That's our job if we really like what we're hearing in there. And that's something for me when I heard the first teachings. It was so arcane, so medieval, so strange, the way of, even men sitting in front of women and all this kind of business, like from India, was shocking to me. It was shocking to me. But then I realized, if there's some truths in here, I have got to strip away all the Tibetan aspect of it, the Indian aspect of it, and get to the core of the concepts. And then I began to realize that all these ideas, if they are true, if they have to be universal. So it's up to me, to do that unpacking myself. And that means you've got to start with the foreign package and then you slowly put it into your own language. That's our job. That's our job, because we don't have to expect these Tibetans to turn into being Russian or something, or English. No, it's our job. That's our job to do it, if we think there's something worthwhile there. And then we will find meaning. So, okay, now with mantra, the way the Tibetans and all the previous Indians talk about mantra, which are all Sanskrit, the Tibetans never translated the mantras. You can translate them. There are English translations. There can be Russian. There can be Tibetan translations. But they've left mantra in the Sanskrit. And the way they talk about mantra, is some incredibly subtle, very pure sound that is something that's so blessed and so special. Okay, we can't see that initially. We can't see that. So all the mantras, such as Vajrasattva, you can translate it. Okay, you can. There are translations of the meaning. But in the end, these meanings, they might be able to have literal translation, but that's not the meaning. They talk about the meaning being far more subtle. So, for example, the benefit of mantra. I know Lama Zopa talked about one time. I mean, when you look at the Vajrayana explanation of the physical body and the mind, the intimate relationship. So as Lama Zopa says, in the Kala Chakra Tantra, they have these detailed descriptions of the intimate relationship between physical and internal and external energy. Internal is mind, consciousness, thoughts. External is the physical elements. And of course, in this model, they describe the physical world in terms of being made up of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water. Clearly, we talk about a million different elements these days in our science. But this is earth, air, fire, water. So this is the whole Vajrayana model. So based on that model, we've got gross consciousness and we have gross body. This is the bag of bones here, and then our sensory consciousness. Then we've got subtle consciousness, which is more to do with all our mental states. They're more subtle. And subtle physical energy. So that is described in great detail and this is the same as the Tibetan medical system. We have this subtle nervous system, 72,000 subtle channels going throughout our body, and coursing through those channels are this subtle wind energy or prana. And this is the basis of our health. Tibetan doctors study this for 14, 15 years. This is the same as the Chinese system, similar to the Ayurvedic system, the old-fashioned ones, the subtle wind energies, prana. And they are coursing through all our channels. And this is the point, our mental states are inextricably linked to those wind energies going through all our channels. Clearly, this is not how we talk in neuroscience. It's very evident. It's quite different. So, Lama Zopa said, even just saying having a negative thought, that pollutes your mind, which creates the karma to keep being angry, let's say, but also it pollutes your wind energies that are linked to that anger. And then that eventually manifests karmically as your sickness. That's the cause of sickness. And then even further, more over long term, that impacts upon the external elements of the universe, which causes us then to get born in an environment where the elements are all disrupted, like an earthquake or smelly environment or whatever. It's all coming from the mind. So mantra is said to be so pure, so powerful, so subtle, but just even the thought of the mantras, the sound of the mantra, and because wind energy, prana, is sound. That is sound. So by saying mantra, you're purifying your physical energies, you're purifying your mind, and you're purifying your speech so that your speech can be beneficial for others. So it's a much subtler meaning. There's something special about these Sanskrit sounds. And because of the power over the centuries of countless millions of people saying these sounds, it builds up this power. That's how they talk about it. Okay, what's next?
The next question is, what to do with a headache during meditation?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just stop and take a pill. I mean, what to do with a headache? If you're brave enough, you can transform your headache, but that's really advanced. And if you're asking, every time I meditate, I get a headache, what should I do? That's a different discussion. I don't know. That sounds quite difficult. But you didn't say it like that. I mean, if you get a headache every time you meditate, something's going wrong, So I don't know what to say. And you haven't asked me more. If you want to ask me more, then please come back with something more after I've said that. What's next?
Okay. There are so many ways now to get some teachings that it is difficult to structure all of it. Would you recommend to limit it?
Well, it's not. It's like there is so many teachings right now. It's true. But if we understand the Lam Rim, and I'm not kidding now, if we understand this packaging of Buddha's teachings, then everything in Buddha's teachings, from A to Z, all the metaphysics, all the philosophy, all the psychology, all the epistemology, everything in Buddhism has to fit into that package. If it doesn't, it's not Buddhism. So when you know that package and you know the first stages, the lowest scope, junior school, that's all about karma, that's all about and that's vast, learning about karma, all about the mind, all about refuge, that's all, and all about impermanence. All that is the junior school level. So when you know that belongs there and you've got to go to junior school first, then you know what to study. Then you know that the next level, that's junior school. Then the next level is the mind. That's about the mind. And that's where you study the Four Noble Truths, what suffering is, the causes, and blah, blah, blah. Then you go to the university level and you've got the compassion wing. That's all the teachings about love, compassion, huge, vast body, all the Bodhisattva teachings. And then you've got the Vajrayana. So if you know the character of the different teachings and where they belong, it won't be confusing. You will know what you need to study. And in the end, you've got to study all of it. But in order is much better. Or if you know maybe one day you'll do a compassion course, that's all about bodhicitta, that's university. And then the next day you study a course on karma, that's junior school, that's lower scope. So when you know where it all fits, it won't be confusing. And this is the biggest stumbling block, I think, in us modern people, because we don't think of spiritual teachings in this coherent way. We just think of it as random kind of weird ideas, So then it's utterly confusing to us. But with the Lam Rim, when you know it all, where it all fits, then, you can do things in a seemingly random way, but you know that you need all those pieces. And then slowly, as you learn more and more and study more and more, you even start to see the psychological components of it and how one is necessarily more difficult than the other. That's what takes time. That's the benefit of this packaging of the teachings. Initially, it's not evident to us. It takes time, What else?
When you meditate on thoughts and mind, should you try to find out what kind of mind it is, gross, subtle, or subtlest?
I understand. There's different kinds of meditation, so many kinds. So there's two modes of meditation. One is called concentration and one is called insight. Concentration meditation is simply a skill that we need to learn to develop, and that is necessarily non-discursive. There's not, you're not engaging in thinking in any way. You're not using analysis. You're learning to train your mind to stay focused. That's your main concern in single-pointed concentration. So you can use different objects to concentrate on. Sometimes, typically in the Tibetan tradition, we use the visualization of the Buddha. Sometimes Lord Buddha taught very simply the breath. Sometimes and then certainly in Mahamudra meditation, the concentration mode, the first mode of meditation, the object we focus on is the thoughts themselves. That's that meditation. So when you're just doing concentration, you're not trying to work out anything. You're training your mind to stop the raving on. You're training your mind not to buy into all the conceptual stories. You're training your mind not to go blah, 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 blah. It's not easy. It's called concentration. And the only reason you need that is so you can do the second mode of meditation, which is where one whole methodology is using intelligent analysis in order to break down ego's misconceptions about reality so you can start to see the truth. That's insight. So there's many of those, and that includes all the Vajrayana practices where you visualize a deity. That's also the second mode. So when you're meditating on the mind as a concentration object, you simply focus on whatever arises. No discussion, no analysis, nothing. But obviously, when you're out of your meditation, you're going to have learned something from that meditation. Because you see, normally right now, our thoughts are never stopping. They never stop. And we pay attention only when the thoughts are screaming. We only pay attention when they become emotional. But much of the time we're on autopilot, going to breakfast, going to the toilet, driving the car, talking to people. We're totally focused normally on the outside world. We know the thoughts never stop, but we only pay attention when they come rising to the surface and vomit out of the mouth, or you want to kill somebody. And that's a bit late. So the point is this: the thoughts right now are utterly uncontrolled. We probably have 1,000 thoughts a second. They even say that in Western psychology. So the concentration isn't to make all the thoughts go away. Eventually, when you've got single-pointed concentration and you've accessed a subtler level, you will be beyond the conceptual because you have such focus. But that's not the goal of it. The goal of it, you start by simply focusing on one thing. You're trying to anchor your mind to one thing instead of floating all over the place. You're trying to anchor your mind with courage and determination on just one thing. It can be the thoughts themselves. It can be the breath. It can be a visualization. And then what you're learning from this, you're kind of developing some strength, inner strength, to control your mind. Normally, when we do start to notice our thoughts, we just go from pillar to post. We argue with this one, we build up this one, we have a conversation with that person, we're feeling jealous, we have an angry story. I mean, we all go mad because we have no control. And we assume because the thoughts arise, we've got no choice about them. They're just chaos. So we've got to start by not buying into the thoughts. And that's the big advantage we get from even doing a little bit of concentration. You do your concentration, whether it's on your mind or your breath, in your session, then you open your eyes and you hop up and you start doing your job again. Or you go to the kitchen and your kids are there and the hubby's there. And you're still working on the kitchen and doing the dishes and getting breakfast and chatting to them. You're focusing on the outside again. But what you've learned from your meditation is, because you made determination and you made an effort to step outside your head and not follow every thought, now you start to notice the thoughts more clearly. And that's when you can begin. Now the work begins in your daily life, where you start to be your own therapist and you hear the anger coming. You hear your husband, burping, and you can't stand the burping and you want to get mad at him. But you say, catch yourself, shut up, Robina, it's just a burp, it's okay, it's his right, let him burp as he wants. But whereas before you start to look at your mind and start to focus and start to watch your breath, you wouldn't even have noticed that you were angry and it would have just vomited out your mouth. You get more conscious from doing the concentration. But concentration meditation is not using your conceptuality. You let it be there. You're strengthening your ability to stay focused. I hope that's clear. What else?
This is not a question, it's like a comment.
Okay.
Western psychotherapy took a lot from the Eastern practices
That's
because
right.
they actually will.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's true, absolutely. I think so much of what we hear these days, we can see the evolution of it. It comes right back to the Buddha, you know. Or even before that, the Indians, these genius Indians before the Buddha. They're the ones, as His Holiness says, who began more than 3,000 years ago the investigation into the nature of self. These incredible Indians. Amazing. Thank goodness, finally, we modern smarty pants people are now seeing there's some validity in it, you know. What else?
Next question. Can something beginningless have an end? So that's a question about mind.
Yeah, easily,
So
not a problem. Listen, that's easy. Not even forget the mind. Don't even be fancy. It's simple. You can have an egg. We know it came from a chicken. You can have a chicken. We know it came from an egg. But honey, you can break the egg anytime you like and get no more chickens. That's the answer.
Okay, next question then. Who is Vajrayogini?
Vajrayogini is one of in highest Tantra. Okay, let me explain a bit more. You've got Buddha, okay, the word Buddha, that actually refers to the unmanifest, all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-pervasive consciousness. That's what a Buddha is. That's Buddha mind. A person who's done the job of accomplishing Buddhahood, following Buddha's methodology. That's what a Buddha is. When you're finally a Buddha, you don't need a bag of bones. You don't need gross bodies. You don't even need a subtle body. You're just pure consciousness, manifesting throughout the universe. Not manifesting, just existing. All-knowing, all-compassionate, blah, blah, blah. So then, but the point is, what causes a person to become a Buddha, working hard, life after life after life, is unbelievable compassion. So then, out of compassion, you don't just sit there spacing out in your blissful mind. You've got to manifest in bodies to benefit poor old sentient beings. So there's two kinds of bodies the Buddha manifests in. One is called, in Sanskrit, this Buddha mind, just giving you these Sanskrit words which you'd read about in the teachings, the mind, the enlightened mind, is known as the Dharmakaya. It literally means truth body. Kaya means body, but it's the mind. Then you've got the grosser form in which the Buddha's mind will manifest for sentient beings. And there's two of those. One is called the Nimanakaya, which is the body that looks like you and me. Shakyamuni Buddha, for example, that fairy tale, as that person said, historically was this human being 2,500 years ago, an Indian gentleman who was a prince, left his life, did his own thing, and became a Buddha, and then traveled around for 50 years teaching other people. That's the Nimanakaya. The emanation body. The mind is the mind of the Buddha, but they take on forms that we can see and hear and recognize. That's their kindness, you know. Then you've got a subtler form, body, these Buddha minds manifest in, that only the Arya Bodhisattvas can see in their meditation and even in reality. You're an Arya when you've realized emptiness and when you're a Bodhisattva. So the Arya Bodhisattvas can see what they call the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. And that's what you see depicted in all the thousands of pictures in Vajrayana, in Tantra. So basically, Shakyamuni Buddha is the manifestation is the emanation body. And then you've got over here, you've got like a family tree. Above is Buddha. Then you've got the two bodies. One is Shakyamuni, and under him is all the sutra teachings. Okay? Now you've got the tantric aspect of that same mind, and that is called Vajradhara, or Dorji Chung in Tibetan. He's blue, and this aspect is the monk, and that indicates that level of practice, controlling your body, controlling your speech, controlling your mind. That's the meaning. Look at the statue of Buddha. He's an emanation of control, body, speech, and mind. That's the aspect of junior school and high school, the wisdom wing, the Hinayana level of the path, the first and second scopes of the Lam Rim. That's the manifestation that we then will learn from that. You become that from all the practices there. Now you've got the Bodhisattva path. And that includes Tantra. So the bodhisattva aspect of the Buddha, Vajradhara, he's looking more gorgeous with jewelry and looking beautiful with silken clothes. And the whole energy here, because it's from Vajradhara, from Vajrayana, is to lift our mind, to make us blissful. So it's gorgeous. This is to subdue us. The Vajrayana is to lift us. It's the bodhisattva path and the tantric path especially. So Vajradhara is bodhisattva style in the Indian style, like the royal aspect with jewels, beautiful clothing, young, radiant, divine, to lift our hearts. That's Vajradhara. He's the generic, general manifestation in Vajrayana of the Buddha. And that's the Sambhogakaya. Then under him are the 5 Buddha families. And you've got 5 of these, and Tantra is more sophisticated psychologically. In the junior school and high school level, you control your body, you control your speech, and you control your delusions. In Tantra, on the Bodhisattva path, now that you've got renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, theoretically, you are more blissful, more radiant, more capable. So you can utilize all the mind, all aspects of the mind, including the delusions. So all the Vajradhara is a generic boss Buddha in Tantra. Under him, the 5 Buddha families, and all the other thousands of Buddhas under the 5. So they're all male, female, wrathful, peaceful, all shapes and sizes. And basically this is psychology. Every one of them is a manifestation of different psychological qualities you either want to develop or you want to purify. It's much more broad in Tantra. And it's just pure psychology. Tara, so for example, so Buddha has 3 essential qualities, you could say. One is compassion, the wish to benefit others. One is the wisdom that knows how to benefit others. And the third is like the power to do so. So that they are 3, those 3 are depicted by Chenrezig, compassion Buddha, Manjushri, wisdom, holding a sword, cutting through ignorance. And then Tara is an example, Mother Buddha Tara, she's an example of the power, action, success, cut through the obstacles. It's literally psychology. Of course, it's not what we think is psychology. But Jung would have appreciated this. It's like, archetypes. Jung would have appreciated this. These are pictures of idealized Buddhas, an idealized version of yourself when you accomplish these. That's what they are, basically. So each of them, there are thousands, represent different qualities. So, so for example, the first of the 5 Buddha, one of the 5 Buddha families is called Amitabha. So he's a manifestation of purified attachment energy. And all the Buddhas under him, like Tara is in that family. There's many Buddhas in that family that are related to purifying attachment. So one of those is called Vajrayogini. She's in the highest Tantra. She's a gorgeous naked red lady, and she's a manifestation of purified attachment. So by doing that practice, you transform your attachment into the path to enlightenment. Yamataka is this wrathful dude. If you met him in person, he'd scare the life out of you, with a million's arms and legs, looking totally fierce. He's a manifestation of purified anger, for example. Every one of them is like that. Some are compassion, some are peaceful, some are wrathful, some are male, some are female. They're utilizing what we know, male and female. Okay, we don't think we've got 42 arms and green bodies, but it's a symbolic. But they're a manifestation, a kind of generic image of a certain quality that you want to cultivate. That's what these Buddhas are. And you can become any one of those. Like it's, and so they always say too, if you have a guru, that the Buddha is the guru. You see Vajrayogini as your guru. You see Tara as your guru. And we get a bit confused about that. Well, if you want to draw a picture of a perfect tennis player, let's say a boy, a perfect tennis player, think about this, you draw exactly the right shape, the right kind of muscles, with his hands the right way, with a perfect racket, his face a certain way, all the muscles correct, the whole perfect picture. It shows you exactly what you can become. Now, it's not personal though. So when you look at Tara, this green lady, it's just a generic image of a perfect tennis player. It's a particular image of a Buddha showing the aspect of power. Chenrezig is an image of a Buddha showing the aspect of peace. Vajrayogini is a Buddha showing the aspect of purified attachment. These gorgeous breasts, she's naked, she's divine. She's a manifestation of purified attachment. So if you want to make it personal, that tennis player picture, you put Federer's face on it. You put Martina, whatever you like, whoever you want there. You put, what's her name, whatever, whoever you like. You put their face on it, and that's your guru. So that becomes your tennis player. You imagine when you visualize Tara, this generic green lady, you know what she means because you've learned it. You don't know what tennis is until you learn it. You can see a nice picture of a handsome-looking guy holding a thing in his right hand. You don't know it's called tennis until you learn tennis. So you look at a green lady. You don't know what this green lady is until you learn what she means. You don't know what Vajrayogini is until you learn what she means. So it's a visual language showing you what you can do. So and then you put your coach's face on that tennis player. You put your guru's face on that picture of Tara. You put your guru's face, and you feel it's their energy, it's their mind manifesting as Vajrayogini to help me purify my attachment. That's how you think about these Buddhas, okay? What else? Of course it's not Russian. Of course it's not Australian. It's completely foreign, weird language. But if we think there's something useful there, and how do you think there's something useful there? Look at the product. Look at the Dalai Lama. You don't have to look at Shakyamuni. Look at the Dalai Lama. God in heaven. 60 years this man has been running around the world showing us exactly the benefit of being a Buddhist. So, this fantasy called Shakyamuni, don't look at the fantasy of Shakyamuni, look at the reality of the Dalai Lama. Open your eyes and see he's the living example of the efficacy of this. That should give us confidence. Yeah, next one.
What is the difference between the subtle body and the subtlest body?
Thank you. This is all described in the Vajrayana, and this is described in the death process. We go through, we learn this, the death process, the gradual deconstruction of the various components of a person. And this is we need to practice this in our meditation, so when death does come, we can be familiar with it, and we can go through the process without having a panic attack. So we can learn to get to the very subtle level, so we can then start to get some realizations. That's the yogis do that. So, okay, gross body is this bag of bones. Gross mind is inextricably linked to this, and it's fairly evident. That's the sensory consciousness. Look at it. Eyeballs that have, and the eye consciousness functions through the medium, all the eyeball and all the nerves. Tactile consciousness, tongue consciousness, nose consciousness, ear consciousness. That's the gross body, gross mind. Then we have subtle body and subtle mind. And subtle mind is actually our sense, is our mental states. We have some of those now, but they're more subtle. And they are, like I said before, inextricably linked with the subtle physical energies. And the subtle body consists of the 72,000 subtle channels coursing through our body, all the different states of our mental consciousness coursing through connected to those different winds throughout our body. Your Tibetan doctor, you go to her, she'll feel your pulses. And she'll feel the imbalance of your certain wind energies, and she knows it's related to your anger. That's why you're having shouting panic attacks. No, attachment. That's why she knows why you're having panic attacks and fears and worries and anxiety. That's connected to attachment. She'll know all the different wind energies in your entire body, and she'll know all the different states of mind connected to your wind energies. And then you take your herbal medicine, that settles the wind energies, which in turn settles the mind. That's the Tibetan medical system based on the Vajrayana. Now you've got more subtle than that, and as you go through the death process, these levels deconstruct. First, all the energies go from the crown down to the heart chakra, and up from the feet up to the heart chakra. And when you get to finally the 8th stage of death, which is very subtle consciousness, extremely subtle consciousness, or clear light consciousness, that is only the subtlest level of your mind. All the other levels completely ceased, and the subtlest level of the physical, which is only this subtle wind energy, the subtlest there's no manifestation there. It's just very subtle mind, very subtle wind. We never access that. The greatest of the great yogis finally can access that, and the ones who've practiced all their lives, as Lama Zopa says, death is what they've been waiting for, because they're able to effortlessly go through this deconstruction process, staying conscious at ever more subtle levels, all the way to the subtlest level. And that's what we're aiming for, because that's like the microscope of our mind, and that's the level of mind, the very subtle mind, the clear light mind. That's the level of mind that's capable of seeing reality, because it's unencumbered by anything else. It's literally the subtlest level, and that very subtle mind inextricably linked to this very subtle wind energy, and that's what then leaves the body and takes rebirth, and then off again with the grosser levels. I hope that's useful. Go on. Yeah.
What kind of meditation is visualization? Is it analytical meditation or concentration?
Thank you very much. It's like it's analytical because it's using your mind's moving, your mind's doing something. Your mind is constructing a visualization as opposed to having it's all thoughts. Think about it. It's all thoughts. You're using your thoughts as well as your capacity to visualize something. So that's absolutely the second mode. That's insight meditation, and you're trying to get insight. It's another method for becoming a Buddha. So the success of those meditations, whether you're analyzing emptiness with conceptual thought only, or you're visualizing Tara using your conceptual thoughts as well as visualization, the success of both of those in the insight mode is dependent upon how much concentration you get in the first mode. So you use your concentration, but it's discursive. As soon as you start to visualize or think things, that's the second mode. And the aim of this one is to get insight. So by thinking about emptiness, you get insight into emptiness. By thinking about the qualities of a Buddha, you get inspired. By visualizing a Buddha is another method for becoming a Buddha. And these Vajrayana ones are said to be very powerful. They talk about how you're bringing the end result into the present. So that's, yes, it's analytic. It is technically, you're using analysis, including visualization, to get insight. And it's based upon the success of your concentration, which is the first mode. What's next?
What is analytical meditation?
The two kinds, like I just said, one is visualization and one is using thoughts. So it's a fancy, it's analytical is a clever word for to think about something. So basically analytical meditation is you think about something. You think it through. So when you go to school and your teacher tells you 1 + 1 is 2, you've got to have that information written down on your book, and you can't you won't remember it probably, so you write it down. Then she basically says to you, if she were a Buddhist, she'd say to you, now I want you to go home, Robina. What she does say is go and do your homework, and what she wants you to do is get insight into that truth. That's what she wants, isn't it? But what's the method you use? You think about it. You think about it. So you've got to first have concentration. If you're so scattered you can't concentrate for more than 1 second, by the time you say 1 plus, you'll forget what you're doing. So you've got to have concentration first. So she won't say to you, go home and do some single point of concentration, because we don't talk like that. But she will suggest that you try and get a place that's quiet, close the door, be at your desk, be focused. That's your focusing part, the first part. And now you go to the second mode, which is where you do your homework. That's it. And what do you use to do your homework? You use your thoughts. Guess what? Analytical is just a fancy Greek word, got Greek basis, I suppose. Yeah, for the word to think about. But you use intelligent thinking. You don't just sit there and go 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 1 is 2, hoping for it to come. No, you've got to know what 1 means. You've got to think about what plus means. You know what equals means. You know what 2 means. In the beginning, it's complicated. You've got to put these thoughts together. So on the basis of 1, some concentration, you go to 2, and the aim is to get insight into this, to understand it. That's all. And the method you use, Tibetans call it analytical meditation. Remember the word in Tibetan for the verb to meditate is the verb to become familiar with, to familiarize. I mean, it's so simple. That's the meaning of the word. So the real meditation is in the second mode. The beginning is just getting concentration. The real method is in the second. You want to understand 1 + 1 is 2. You want it to have meaning. So you have to think it through. You use logical thought to come to the conclusion. And then at some point you go, oh, mummy, I get it. That's how you realize emptiness. That's how you realize impermanence. That's how you realize everything in the Buddha's teachings. You have concentration. The more concentration, the more subtle your mind, the more focused. And the second mode, they call it in Tibetan analytical meditation. But a simple way of saying what that is you use your thinking. But not in a random, stupid way, but in a logical way. Now, you think about it, that's how we have learned everything. But because we don't use the term analytical meditation, we get so confused, It's just using your intelligent thinking to come to a conclusion about something. And here we're talking about karma, impermanence, death, the mind, the delusions, emptiness, bodhicitta, all the components of Buddha's path. I hope that's clear. It's nothing mystical. What else?
During meditation, when you see that your mind is bubbling and it is very obvious, what's the next step? Just watch or what?
It depends on what your object of concentration is. If you're concentrating on the breath, your simple task is to stay focused on the breath. That's the job to be done. That's it. You let the thoughts come and you let the thoughts go. It's a bit like when you're driving on the chaotic Russian roads. I'll never forget driving in Russia. It was outrageous. I loved it because you Russians have no rules. That's exactly how I like to drive. So, if you're driving though on a crazy freeway or on a road, think about this. It's so logical. You're concentrating like a hawk. If you lose concentration for 1 second, you will be dead. So you've got to focus on exactly what you're doing. But out of the corner of your eye, listen to this. All the cars are there, all the noises and the screaming and the yelling. And I remember, people usually put their fist outside the car when they get angry. Well, a Russian guy put his entire body out the car. I'd never seen anything like it. You Russians, I love you. Anyway, so you focus. You have to focus, no matter how much noise, no matter how much traffic. What do you do with it? You avoid it. You leave it there, and you navigate what you're doing. Now, if you get all nervous, I wish those cars would go away. How dare those cars be there? That car should not do this. Then you go crazy. Mind your own business. Let them do what they like. You focus on your job. That's how you do concentration. You focus on what you want to do. Let the thoughts come and let the thoughts go. Don't resist them. Don't analyze them. Don't wish they wouldn't be there. None of that. That just wastes time. Just let them be like the traffic. You not ignore, but don't start wishing they weren't there. How dare those cars, blah. That's why we get angry. Then you'll never concentrate. You'll crash. And same with meditation. Your job is to watch your breath. If that's your focus, you just watch the breath. No matter how many noises outside, no matter how many crazy thoughts come, you ignore them. That's your job in concentration meditation. Now, when you're not doing concentration meditation, you can do many other kinds. You can make up your own meditations, and you can start to do an analysis of your anger. You don't just, the thoughts are coming. They're so crazy. They're out of control, completely out of control. You can't do analysis of every single one. You go mad. But if you're having a particular problem with your boyfriend, you could sit down and you could do a little thinking through in your own mind. Well, Robina, I do have faith in karma. I talk to yourself. I have confidence in karma. If I have confidence in karma, that means I've got a karmic connection with his boyfriend. And that means I must have harmed him in the past if he's harming me now. So stop being such a victim and shut up and stop blaming him. That's how you do an analysis. Then you use your thoughts to come to some intelligent conclusion, but you're using intelligence and you're using some focus. So concentration meditation, you leave everything alone except the thing you're focusing on. And what you're trying to do is you're training your mind to become strong. Right now our mind is so weak. We'll be disturbed by anything. We'll get so upset about everything. That's why we're exhausted by the end of the day. We have to learn to let them be. They're not our business. Let the trucks come. Let the trucks go. Let the people next door shout. That's their business. But we get so upset and stick our nose in everything. No wonder we go crazy. So concentration, you're training your mind to become strong, to focus on one thing, what you want to do. And the traffic is a good example. If you're a bit of a victim, you'll be yelling and screaming and shouting at these drivers and these people. I'm so upset and how dare they? That's just being weak. Let them do what they like and you navigate and you go exactly where you want. That's concentration. I hope we're communicating. What's next?
Is there any connection between shamatha and the quality of memory? Can one improve his memory while developing shamatha?
Of course! Listen, our mind now, we are like little kind of pathetic children who just have demented, crazy thoughts. We can't see past our own nose. We can't remember 99% of today. We are totally ridiculous and we think we're so clever. When you've got some semblance of concentration, not even all the way to the 9 stages, you can't even imagine the bliss and clarity and brilliance and power of your mind. You have absolute control over every thought. You can see the past. You can see the future. You see everything perfectly. Lama Yeshe says it's just like your mind is so powerful as if you can count every atom in the universe. We can't even imagine the power of our mind. Don't hear it in a ridiculous way. It's a literal thing. So of course memory. You have perfect memory. You'll be able to see the past and future. And as you grow past shamatha and get to realizing emptiness, you can't imagine the power of your mind. You can see the past of others. You just because delusions are all in the way now. This is what we think is normal in our culture. It's not. It's insanity. It's normal, but it's insanity. So when you remove all the delusions, remove all the limitations and the rubbish, your mind becomes crystal clear, vast, spacious, see the past, see the future, see the minds of others, and that's when you can then begin to help people. You've got to have clairvoyance to help people, not just become some smart person. So you can help people. Of course, yes. No question. That's long-term concentration.
Yeah. The next question is, can you recommend a good book about different Buddha emanations? This hierarchy you were talking about, different Buddha families and explanation.
That's right. I think there's one book, I know in English, I have no idea if it's in Russian, and I forget what it's called, but it's by Jonathan Landau, Landaw, an American student of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. He lives in California. Jonathan Landau, Landaw, and the artist Andy Weber, Weber, a German artist who lives in England. There's 20 years ago, 25 years ago it was published, and it's got it's all about these different Buddhas and the main Buddhas and how they all kind of fit together. I think it's probably one that I do remember, that I do know about. I can't think of the title of it. I hope it's still in print. I just don't know. Yes, go on.
And the next question is, what is the starting point if you want to study symbols and psychology of Buddhist visualization?
If you want to study what? What's the first word?
Symbols.
You've got to take this. No, it's a very organic approach to it. You know, it has to be part of practice. You don't go and study it separately from practice. That's the evolution of it as a Buddhist, as a Tibetan Buddhist. So you take your refuge, you take your lay vows, you take your bodhisattva vows, then you have initiation, and you learn. Then you just do the practices. But and usually in the monasteries they study all the sutra teachings in the monastic university system. All our geshis and everybody, they study for 20, 25 years, and then they study tantra. You don't study that much beforehand. So it's rare that Westerners study it. Some people can, some people do. It's incredibly complex and quite sophisticated and quite unusual. But it's rare for most of us modern people. But it's all there to be studied. But it's rare that even if you the tradition is you take the practice and then you take the initiation from a lama, and then they will give a commentary on that practice. So the main thing is not just on the symbols and the intellectual level of it, it's on the experience of the practice of it. That's the way we engage in it. And then certainly if you study Tibetan art, that's when you study it all. That's when you definitely would study it. So that would be an experiential way of studying it. I mean, I know there are amazing books there. There's one book by an English painter called Robert Beer, Beer. Actually, the last time I saw him was in Moscow. We had dinner together. He's got a massive book about looking at every symbol, every imaginable thing in Tibetan art. So it's very interesting, and I forget the name of that as well. But it's an amazing book. Robert Beer, Beer, English. What else?
Venerable Robina, do you do yoga? And is yoga necessary in practice of Buddhism?
There's not much physical yoga. In highest yoga tantra, the most advanced stages, when you do things like inner fire practice, which is the completion stage, the most advanced level of highest yoga tantra, there are various kinds of yoga exercises, but they're very esoteric and not many people do them. But most people, yoga is from India, yoga is from the Hindus, and that did not go to Tibet at all. There's no yoga as we know it in Tibet, not at all.
Okay.
Myself, I tried yoga once, but it was too slow and boring for me. I did martial arts. That suited my nature better. Now I'm just too old for everything. I mean, I do a few qigong exercises. I don't do yoga. Go on.
If we talk about seeing the absence of I, can we call it an analytical meditation?
The main method, using the two modes of meditation to realize emptiness, absolutely. You've got to have concentration first. Keep remembering the first mode of meditation is simply to get your mind to be focused, laser-like. And the more subtle you get, the more profound your mind is. Then the second mode is where you do the analysis. So the king of logics, as Lama Yeshe said, the king of logics to prove emptiness is dependent arising. So did we talk about emptiness at all? Diana, did we talk about emptiness very much? Any of the classes so far? You remember? Yes or no? No. Okay, let's talk about emptiness now. Good example. We've got 35 minutes. Let's talk about emptiness. Okay. So all the teachings in the Lam Rim end up with emptiness. That's the subtlest, most advanced level. Everything is geared, each step of the way, incrementally, logically, to lead us to be able to unpack and unravel the ultimate way that things exist, combined with bodhicitta. That's how it's taught in the Mahayana. Okay, so in general, Buddha's telling us that we are not in touch with reality, and he's meaning that quite literally. So we really begin to learn that in the middle scope in high school, where we start to we study the text on the mind. We learn to distinguish between the deluded, neurotic, I-based, fear-based states of mind that are the source of suffering, and we learn to distinguish between those and the valid states of mind, the love, the kindness, the intelligence. That's the real job of being your own therapist in day-to-day life, and that's taught in the middle scope. That's taught in high school. So we learn to become very skillful then, and we start to recognize these two distinct characteristics, the two distinct categories of our mind. Those that are the deluded, neurotic, distorted, fear-based, I-based states of mind. And there are three main ones. We've talked about this. There's 84,000 Buddha talks about, but they all subsume down to three. Ignorance, the root delusion, ignorance. The root delusion, which we're going to talk about now because that's related to emptiness, that believes in this intrinsic, solid, independent, separate me. That's the root of the problem. It's totally primordial. On the basis of that, there is this panic-stricken kind of emotional hunger called attachment to get what that fantasy me wants. And then there's a panic attack of anger, aversion, annoyance, irritation, frustration, or despair and depression, a whole spectrum, when attachment doesn't get what it wants. Then all the other delusions are branch out from those. These are the three main ones. So, okay, in the middle scope, when we learn about, we're trying to subdue mainly attachment. This is the main voice of ignorance. So now when we get to the wisdom level, at the advanced level of the bodhisattva path, we learn about emptiness. Now we're going to attack the root delusion, uproot the root delusion. So there's many logical arguments we have to use. And why I say logical arguments is because ego is entrenched in its own ridiculous, made-up nonsense, and we believe those views as true. So we've got to unpack those views. We've got to unpack them quite literally. So ignorance is a really specific delusion. It's the main delusion. It's the root of samsara. So ignorance is a simple word, but there's kind of like a double level of ignorance. You know, if you think that that's pink, you've got a problem. It's not pink. But, you know, so first of all, so this is simple ignorance is, I say to you, what colour's that? You go, I don't know. Well, I'll tell you, it's called black. And you say, oh, thank you very much. There's nothing in your mind obstructing you from hearing the truth because you have no other view there. So you're able to learn the truth very quickly. It's black. But if you believe it's pink, you're convinced it's pink, and you believed it for so long it even appears pink to you, you've got double ignorance. Not only do you not know the truth, but you believe in a lie. That's this ignorance, this root ignorance. So basically, Buddha's telling us the reality is that everything has no inherent nature. So of course that's pretty abstract for us, but we're going to go into it. He says that's the truth. Reality is nothing has an inherent nature. We go, well, who cares? We've never heard of that. But why he's telling us? Why would someone say to you, that is not pink, Robina? Because you think it's pink. So why does Buddha tell us that, sorry guys, nothing has an independent nature? Why would he tell us that? Because that's the lie we believe in. So not only do we not know the truth, that everything is interdependent and nothing has an intrinsic nature, not only do we not know that truth, we believe the exact opposite, 1,000,000,000%. So that this is why emptiness is so hard to realize. because we believe in the opposite. We believe in a total lie, and we're believing in this for eons, Buddha says, and it's the source of all our suffering. It's the source of attachment. It's the source of anger. It's the source of all the dramas. It's the source of all the lower realms. It's the source of all the suffering. So it's a really deeply entrenched lie that's been there since beginningless time, Buddha says. So it needs a lot of work. So the whole of the Lam Rim working, controlling your body, controlling your speech, living in vows, doing purification, knowing your mind, learning concentration, understanding the Buddhist model of the mind, going to the compassion wing, getting compassion and love and bodhicitta, and then practicing the 6 perfections in conjunction with emptiness. Everything is leading logically to this one. Perfectly logically leading the whole path. So, okay. There are many logical arguments we need to use to argue with to argue with ignorance's views. So a colloquial term for ignorance, when we relate it to the self, believing in the independent self, the colloquial term is ego grasping, self-grasping. So we have to argue with that ego grasping's ridiculous position. But it's so subtle, it's like a joke. We don't even hear it, because it is so pervasive in our minds. So anyway, what we have to do is argue with it. So there's many, many different arguments that we have to use when we really start to study emptiness. The king of logics, as Lama Yeshe puts it, is dependent arising. And so this is Lama Tsongkhapa's really favorite way of presenting how things exist. So and it's in the framework of the 2 truths. You've got how things exist conventionally, and you've got how things exist ultimately. And they come together. Now, right now, Buddha says we've got the 2 extreme views. We go like drunken sailors between these 2 extreme views. Whenever we hear, so that the ultimate truth, the way things exist ultimately, the shorthand is the word emptiness. And we're going to describe that exactly. The shorthand for conventional truth is the term dependent arising, or dependent origination, or interdependence. So that's the conventional reality of everything, and emptiness is the summary, is the word for how things exist ultimately. So now whenever we hear emptiness, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Do you have that term in Russian, Diana? It's a brilliant term. Think about it. You don't just throw the bathwater out, you chuck the baby out as well. That's the extreme of nihilism. You chuck the baby out with the bathwater. Because the moment we hear emptiness now, we hear nothingness. We hear, there's no I, might as well kill myself. Even when we say in daily life, we'll go, everything's empty, so it doesn't matter. That's nihilism. And that's the major mistaken interpretation of emptiness. It's the worst. It's like falling into the abyss of the great mistake, as Tsongkhapa says, nihilism. So to really understand the 2 truths is the perfect way for Tsongkhapa to not have the extreme of nihilism. When you hear emptiness, you hear nothingness, or when you hear dependent arising, because dependent arising is the essence of the conventional reality. And what that means is that everything that does exist exists in dependence upon many factors. That's the broad meaning of dependent arising. So as soon as we hear, there's no I from its own side, we throw the baby out with the bathwater and want to kill ourselves. There's nothing anyway. And then we hear, there is an I that does exist in dependence upon this and this and this. And then we go, thank God there is an I after all, and we grasp. So this is the view of nihilism, of eternalism. We over-exaggerate the status of something, and here we under-exaggerate the status of something and say nihilism. And we go between these 2 extremes, even emotionally, up and down like yo-yos, from being overexcited and everything's wonderful and perfect to all the way you want to kill yourself because it's full of despair. These are emotional expressions of these 2 deeply held misconceptions in the bones of our being. So we have to conquer. This is the final mistake we have to conquer. So, okay. So the Buddha's saying, when you study Buddhist philosophy, you learn there are various synonyms for that which exists. And that's important for the Buddha because he wants us to get in touch with that which exists, because he says right now we're living in La La Land. We are not in touch with that which exists. So we've got to be very clear about what exists and what doesn't. This is the crucial point in Buddhism. So the various synonyms for that which exists: object, object of knowledge, existent, established base. There's 4, I can't think. There's about 5 or 6. So, okay, then, by definition for the Buddha, for example, existent, the definition of an existent is that which can be cognized by mind. So in Buddhism, it is axiomatic that that which can be cognized by mind, valid state of mind, is necessarily that which exists. And that which exists is defined as existing because it can be cognized by mind. So this is huge in Buddhism. Mind is a central player. So, okay. So then he says the universe consists, it's true, we can see it, of millions and trillions of different, distinct phenomena. There are lamps and computers and people and mugs, and every day we're creating millions of new phenomena. Think about it. All kinds. Phenomena or object of knowledge or object don't refer to something physical. You know, a thought is an object. Emptiness is an object. A lamp is an object. An app is an object. Since Mr. Steve Jobs came into the world, we've probably created 2 trillion new phenomena, all called apps. All new phenomena. So the thing is, what Buddha's telling us is this: right now, because of these different delusions in our mind, attachment, anger, all rooted in ego grasping, every object that we see, that we perceive, is seen through the lenses of our ridiculous misconceptions. So we're never seeing things as they exist. Even with attachment, the cake is on the plate. What you see on that plate is not what exists on that plate. What you see on that plate through the lenses of your craving and attachment is this divine, delicious, absolutely heavenly piece of divine chocolate cake, such that when you get it, you'll get really happy. That's not the cake that exists. If you hate your ex-boyfriend, when you look at your ex-boyfriend, you see him through the lenses of your anger. You don't see the boyfriend as he is at all. Now, ignorance underpins both of these. Ignorance underpins all the other delusions. It's even more subtle. So the first thing we have to do, if we're trying to see how things exist, we first got to establish what does exist, even conventionally. And that means we've got to point to something, give it a name, and then we give it a definition. And I will say to my mummy, "Mummy, what's that?" And she will say, "That's called a thermos." "Well, what's that?" And she'll explain, "Well, there it is. You can see it's a flat-bottomed metal container, you know." Now, that's the first part of the definition. That tells you its conventional characteristics. And I can see it, but I'm not happy yet. I've got to know the second part of the definition. That's the crucial piece. That tells me what it actually is, what its function is. And this is a major point when we get to realize emptiness. And what its meaning is. What is its job? "Oh, well, sweetheart, it keeps my tea hot." Now I know the definition of a thermos. We can now, but it's not enough yet. She's got to prove it to me. So she's got to take the lid off and pour the tea in and then put the lid on, and then 5 hours later open it up, and we'll both see and we will prove the definition that it kept my tea hot. That's pretty good proof, isn't it? You've got to prove what you say. We believe everything anyone tells us, but we've got to prove it. She's got to prove it, because this is a conventional reality, which means it's by agreement. It's by agreement that is what a thermos is. But not even that, she has to do more to prove it. She's got to make sure there's no other label and no other definition within the world we exist that contradicts that one. Once we've established that, now we can proceed to discuss how a thermos actually exists. So let's take the phenomenon called I. That's the one we think about most of the time. So we are phenomena. Remember, everything that exists is called a phenomenon. Well, we exist. And what kind of phenomenon are we? We're not a toilet. We treat ourselves like toilets sometimes. We're not a cup. We're not a lamp. We're not a computer. We're a person. And I forget the definition of a person, but whatever. Doesn't matter here. So then we can establish I'm a person. So the word person, I, self, me, myself, these are all synonyms. They refer to this, and we are an example of that. A dog is a person. A Buddha is a person. A hell being is a person. A cockroach is a person. Person, me, self, I. They all mean the same. So we established we're that kind of one. Now, whether it's the permos, the lamp, or the person, but let's use the person as the example. Buddha says, like I said before, these appear to us, as Lama Zopa puts it, everything in the universe appears back to us in the aspect of whatever's in our mind. And this is our big problem. Already by looking at attachment, and you start to not believe the cake on the plate, is because your attachment is projecting nonsense onto the cake. My anger is projecting nonsense onto my boyfriend. Well, ego grasping is projecting a subtler mistake onto the self. So, okay, so it's different. Buddha diverged from the Hindus, particularly in relation to his own findings about the nature of self. So, and that's his teachings about emptiness, right? So then he's got three kind of discussions, three arguments about how things exist as a dependent arising. And there's three levels, and each is slightly more subtle than the previous. So the first level of dependent arising is that I, or the rest of the things, come into existence in dependence upon causes. And that's a really, I mean, that's cause and effect. That's profound. Already with that one, if we take the view of karma, that I'm not just this innocent victim that got plonked on this planet by my mummy and daddy or by a creator, that I am the product of my past causes. This alone is such a powerful teaching right in junior school. It's loosening the grip of ego grasping that thinks I'm an innocent victim to whom bad and good things happen randomly. No, it's a logical process of cause and effect. Well, a cup is the same. A thermos is the same. It's the product of many, many, many causes. So let's forget that one. Let's go to the next level, which is slightly subtler. And it's not the subtlest, but this is a powerful analysis to do. And we'll go into this one. That I exist in dependence upon many, many parts. All the bits and pieces in here. So this is that everything is dependent upon their parts. Things exist in dependence upon their parts. So we kind of hear that. Yeah, okay, all right, that's kind of a big deal. What's it mean? Well, what it means is this. And let's do the analysis now. So let's say you guys have IKEA in Russia. Do you have IKEA? Okay, you go to IKEA and now you order a table, but what you get is a box of things, isn't it? Right? You got to, and this is a perfect example. You get a box of things. So that in the factory, they didn't just chuck in a few screws and 5 legs and hope it'll make a table. They're very precise in knowing exactly every detail about every part, such that when you put it together, you have a table. Well, let's just pretend you go to IKEA and you order a me. You're me. You order an Anastasia. You order a Diana. 1 Diana, please. 1 Robina, please. I can't read you Russian guys' names. 1 Sergei. You order a me. It's a good example. And you get the box and you come home. And there's millions of things in there. You know that. And it's got to be very precise. Because if you started doing a list of exactly how many parts make up you, there's got to be a few thousand. So first of all, you've got all your bits of your body. Then you get all your bits of your mind, your anger, your love, your kindness, this moment, that moment. Many, many, many bits and pieces make up a me. Now, you've got to start constructing that me. But what you are looking for, especially in the box, is a very special part, such that you wouldn't be me without it. And that piece is called I. You've got a hand, you've got a ligament, you've got muscles, you've got bones, you've got knees, you've got anger, you've got love. And we are convinced there's a special part that without which you wouldn't exist. And that piece is called this very precious I. Buddha says, don't be ridiculous. You put those bits together, baby, and you will find you don't need a separate piece called an I. The bits do fine on their own. This is very shocking to us. So we've got to do the analysis to prove logically that you won't find that piece. But this is not the total, this is not the full argument, as His Holiness says. We're going to go into this. We've got time. He says, Buddha says, Dalai Lama says, the I is not empty of an independent nature because you can't find a piece called I, and you won't find a piece called I among the other parts. But he says that's not the real premise. This is, we're going to go further now. We'll go back to the second one. He says the I is empty of being inherent. The I is empty of being intrinsic because it's a dependent arising. So I'll just leave that there. So now let's go back to the analysis. We'll do various logical analysis to try and prove that we don't have a piece, a distinct, independent, separate piece called I. So now I'll make one statement. I'm sure we discussed this, but never mind, we'll do it again. So listen, I will tell you, I have a thermos. Okay, what have I got here? Okay. And a tissue. Okay. Now, they say, in this particular argument, they say, if something exists, it's got to be either one or more than one. There's no other choice. So listen to this carefully. How many phenomena did I just state? Well, I'll tell you how many. I said I'm the first phenomenon, have a thermos, a second phenomenon, and a tissue. So I mentioned 3 phenomena. Now, you know perfectly well, without much thinking, if I say to you guys there in Russia, I have a thermos and a tissue, you're going to look at this picture and you're going to verify if I spoke the truth or not. And if I don't have a tissue and I say I have a tissue and a thermos, you're going to feel sorry for me. She's lying. She's weird. If I say, I have an elephant on my table, and you look at the table and there's no elephant, I'm in trouble. So I spoke the truth. Now, this is a conventional, simple truth, and you can prove it easily, because what it means is this. If there are 3 separate phenomena, in this simple example, that means a thermos is not dependent on a tissue in any way for its existence. And the existence of Robina is not dependent in any way upon a thermos. So the thermos can break, Robina's fine. The tissue can get burned, the thermos is fine. So they're separate, but they're also independent. And there's different nuanced meanings here, and we're going to get to it. So that's a simple statement, and we can prove it. There's the tissue, there's Robina, there's the thermos. So they're separate and they're independent. Now the next statement, now it gets more nuanced. I have a nose and an ear. So now without analysis, you can look at me and you'll see it's true. There is an ear, there is a nose. But now it gets tricky. I just made a statement of 3 nouns, 3 phenomena, okay? So like before, if that's a true statement conventionally, we have to point out 3 separate, independent things. Well, we can point out the ear that is not a nose. So if the nose cuts off, the ear can still hear. If the ear is cut off, the nose can still breathe air. They're independent and they're separate. But what about the third phenomena called I? Now that's the point. The Christians say there is one. It's called a soul. The Greeks call it an essence. The Hindus call it a self. That's the grossest mistake. That's easily to prove for the Buddha, that there isn't one of those, a separate independent piece called an I, which is broadly how we feel. So what's the logic to prove that? I will tell you one logic. If you let's say you insult my nose, and I will say back to you, how dare you insult me? And you would say, well, Robina, I didn't insult you, I insulted your nose. Because when I say, how dare you insult me, and this is the analysis we have to do in daily life and in meditation, what we mean when we say you insulted me, we are meaning some special little piece in here, like a puppeteer, like the owner, in here somewhere that's been injured. The I has been injured. You think about this. This is the main word in our mind. It's the main player in our lives, I. And we don't realize it, but when we say the word, we're giving it more ontological status than actually it has. Now, the fact here is, this is where it's more nuanced. There is an I, but not how we think. This is the subtlest meaning. The I is a name we give to all these parts. But so the point is this: if there were a separate I, like we think there is a separate ear, it's not dependent on a nose. They're separate. The ear can be cut off, nose is fine. So if there were another piece along with the ear, the nose, the eye, and all the other bits, another piece in that box called I, such that when you plug it in, now Robina exists, which is how we feel, and it's right in here somewhere in the center, somewhere there, this special little piece called I that runs the show, that is the boss, that owns an ear, that owns a nose. It's an owner. We believe it, we feel it. If there is that piece, then when you hurt my nose, if you punch my nose, my ear won't feel pain, will it? My knee won't feel pain, but if there is a separate I, nor will the I feel pain. It will go, oh, I'm really glad I didn't get punched. Poor old nose, I feel sorry for the nose. If there is a separate I, and Buddha says, of course, there's not. Because if there were, you wouldn't experience suffering. I wouldn't experience suffering. My ear is suffering. My nose is suffering. My knee is suffering. Not the I. But the point is this, it's more nuanced than like the three things before, because there is an I. But as Lama Zopa says, when we've realized the emptiness of I, and we haven't, even got so many more things to talk about, 10 more minutes. When we realize the emptiness, the absence of that fantasy I, when we realize the emptiness of that fantasy I, it's as if there is no I, but there is. Dependent arising I. But what does exist is so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. These are the two truths together. This is the experience of the yogis. So it's more nuanced and more subtle than merely a tissue, a thermos, and a me. Three separate independent phenomena. So the I and the parts cannot be separated, but they're different. So that's the point. The I and the parts are not separate, but they are different. And it's a more nuanced meaning than the others, which are both separate and different. So it's a more subtle meaning. And this is the kind of logic we have to use, to prove to ourselves. This, when we say the word I, what we're meaning by it is way more than there is. So it's neither there is no I, which is nihilistic, nor is it that there is an intrinsic I, which is the eternalism. It's a more nuanced meaning. And this is where we begin to get the middle way. Okay, so now stop that, and now we're going to a new, now let's look at the word emptiness. We get very confused. Okay. All right. So if I'm going to, about to drink out of my thermos, and I go to drink, and I suddenly realize there's nothing there, I'll get a shock. I said, oh my God, my thermos is empty. We'll say that. Oh, my thermos is empty. Now we know it means empty of tea. If I go to my bank account and I'm convinced there's $5,000 there, and I see a zero written, I will get the shock of my life. And I won't just go, oh, well, there's no dollars in my bank. I will go, oh my God, where's my $5,000? Okay, so my bank account is empty. My thermos is empty. We use these words. But what does it mean? It's very simple. There is a thermos that does exist that lacks tea. There is a bank account that does exist that lacks money. So turn that into a noun. Turn this into a noun. The mind cognizes nouns, sort of thing, objects. So you say, oh my God, my cup's empty. But what the mind is cognizing is the phenomenon called emptiness of tea. When I look in the bank, my mind is cognizing the phenomenon called emptiness of $5,000. It's a very precise phenomenon that your mind will cognize. Now, this is the point here. Who is the person who would cognize the absence of tea in a cup? Who is the person who would cognize the absence of $5,000 in the bank? It's the person who expects it to be there. You go into the shop where they're selling all the cups. You don't walk up to the cups and go, oh, look at that, the cups are all empty. Of course they're empty. No one expects tea in the shop. So the only person who will observe the absence of something is the person who expects it. So if I've been living with, whoever's my boyfriend today, Fernando, let's say, there he is. If I've been living with Fernando for 40 years, he's my boyfriend. So of course I completely believe in the presence of a Fernando in my house every day. And I come home one day and there's a note, I've left you for the next door neighbor, goodbye. So guess what I will observe in my house every single day until I get over it, is this very powerful phenomenon called the absence of Fernando. Think about it. Think about it. That's the name of the if Fernando is in the house, then the object that does exist in the house is called Fernando. It's a proper conventional phenomenon. Well, if there's no Fernando, then the object I'm cognizing is the absence of Fernando. And that is a very real phenomenon that does exist in my house. The absence of tea definitely exists in my thermos. The absence of $5,000 definitely exists in my bank account. Now, the Buddha's talking about the absence of an intrinsic me, the absence of an independent me, and the absence of an independent me is the end result of the analysis about dependent arising. And then by thinking about dependent arising, by analyzing the this and the that and all the parts and all the things we began to discuss, and then the thought will come, an experience will come. Oh my God, there's no independent I. That's the observation of the phenomenon called the emptiness of independent I. That's like a taste of emptiness. So when we think realizing emptiness, we assume it means realizing nothingness. It's complete misconception. The realizing of the absence of $5,000 is not the realizing of no dollars. It's the realizing of the absence of your precious $5,000 that you expected to be there. The absence of Fernando, you would never notice in my house. Every time you came to visit, if you've never heard of Fernando, you would never notice the phenomenon called the absence of Fernando, because it's only in the mind of a person who expects him. So, of course, this kind of absence is one we don't want. We want the $5,000. We want Fernando. We want tea. So the better example would be like if, say, you've been told you got cancer. You've been told you got cancer. And you believe you got cancer. And you're devastated. You've got your husband, your children, your life. Your life is in the most divine way, and suddenly everything is shattered. And you're trying to come to terms with this reality. You're going to be dead soon. And then you go to the doctor one day and she says, well, Robina, darling, there's no cancer after all. So what you just realized then was the absence of cancer. And this is how the yogis feel. Lama Zopa said the best yogis, almost the best yogis, when they realize nakedly for the first time in their subtle concentration that there never has been, there isn't, and never could be an intrinsic I. There could be tea. There could be $5,000. There could be cancer. These are simple examples. But I'm trying to get our head around the concept of the idea of a real vivid phenomenon called the absence of something. So we've believed in this intrinsic me since beginningless time. So the greatest yogis, in the depths of their meditation, one day, from all their hard work, they will see nakedly for the first time that there never has been, isn't, and never could be that I. It's a complete fabrication. So it's the most radical emptiness. So the recognition of that absence, that's the recognition of emptiness. So the greatest yogis, the almost greatest yogis, have incredible fear, Lama Zopa said. But the best yogis have complete joy. Finally, they see what they've been clinging to for eons has never, doesn't, and could never exist. So the absence of something, the emptiness of something, is a vivid, real phenomenon. It's got nothing to do with nothingness. In other words, a simple example is the dollars one. If you ask me to look in your bank and I have no expectation of $5,000, I will just see the truth, and the truth is zero. So that's an analogy for nihilism. There's no dollars, right? Think about this. I see the truth. In this case, it is no dollars. You look in the bank, you will see for the first second the zero, and then that'll trigger the main thing that you will see will be the absence of $5,000. So the phenomenon that you cognize is called the absence of $5,000. The phenomenon that I cognize is zero. They're two separate things. So the absence of an I, of an intrinsic I, is not no I. not no I. That's nihilism. There isn't an I. But as soon as you realize emptiness, you then realize dependent arising. That it's a dependent arising, that it's merely labeled. And that's why the two truths go together. As Tsongkhapa says, you'll never fall into the abyss of the great mistake when you see the two truths together. So right now we've got the two extreme views. As we start to understand dependent arising, we start to realize that it means emptiness. When we start to realize emptiness, it tells us it means dependent arising. And eventually, when we've got the real middle way, that's when you're a Buddha, when the two truths are simultaneously cognized, that emptiness and dependent arising are inseparable. So it's like we've got to bring these two truths together, you know, and we're on the right track. But every time we say dependent arising, we go, aha, that means it's empty. And every time we say empty, we go, aha, that means it's dependent arising. Then we're on the right track, you know. So how many more questions were there? We can go a bit longer, but it's late for you guys. It's late, isn't it? What time?
There are 3 questions, but
how many?
Yeah, if you...
How many? 20, 7, 5?
I think 4.
Okay. Well, I think, first of all, are there any questions about emptiness? What I've just said. Did it make any sense, people? Did it make any sense? So maybe just use it for food for thought, okay? Just contemplate the meaning. A little bit about emptiness, getting on the right track, okay? So ask the rest of the questions, darling, before we finish.
Okay. So the next question is, when my mind gets too excited, I go for a jog, and after 5 kilometers, my mind gets much calmer.
Right.
Can you call it a concentration?
Okay, this makes complete sense. We're all berserk. We're all crazy. Everybody's got a crazy mind. So one very practical thing is to channel our mind. If you sit there and just go crazy trying to calm your mind down, you'll go mad. So go for a jog. Nothing wrong. Clean the house. You know, ride your bike, because then we are focusing. So as long as we have the right motivation, you can do anything to help your mind focus. But in the end, the focus we want is beyond the senses. So you can't get single point of concentration on a bike. You can't get single point of concentration while you're jogging. You might get a nice kind of zone, but you've got to get to a subtler level. But in terms of ordinary daily life, if we're trying to get some focus, it really helps us to do something practical like that. Focus your energy, focus your physical energy, and then you'll be able to get it. It's absolutely helpful, but remember the motivation is so you can get to concentration, so you can see your mind, so you can become a Buddha. Then it's marvelous, yeah, very practical. Nothing wrong. Go on, what's next?
When we are talking about meditation without thoughts, when we see that nothing really exists, would it be an analytical meditation?
No, this is all those three phrases don't all fit together. They're all kind of wrong. The first one, start the first phrase. Say the first phrase.
So when we are talking about meditation
without thoughts, yeah?
Without thoughts.
Okay, so stop. Don't go further. Stop right there. That meditation without thoughts, I've never heard of that meditation. There's a meditation where you focus on your mind or on your breath, and the goal is eventually to get to a subtler level where conceptuality has ceased. That's the end result. You don't do a meditation on no thoughts, at least not the way our lamas teach. You meditate on whatever arises in your mind in order for your mind to calm down. So you don't do a meditation of no thoughts. There's no such thing. And then second, that's got nothing to do with that third statement. What does she say or he say?
When we see that nothing really exists.
Okay, that's total nihilism. It's not the meaning at all. It's completely incorrect. That's not like, none of those things is correct. I'm sorry to say. Concentration meditation is to train your attention to stay on one thing. Why? Because you want focus so you can start to go to the second mode or in your daily life to sort through your problems and think clearly about it. That's why. Very simple. So when you have got concentration and your mind is blissful and is radiant and is clear and is focused and is non-conceptual, there will not be thoughts. But that's not the goal of it. It's just a bonus when you've got concentration. And that's got nothing to do with nothing existing, like we've been talking before with the emptiness teaching. So I hope those teachings were helping you understand that point. Next question.
This was already in English, so I'll just read it. Okay. In concentration meditation, which moment we decide when to concentrate on breath or on watching thoughts?
That's up to you. Like anything, when you first learn tennis, you've got to do what your coach says. But as you get a bit better, you can make your own decisions. Same here.
Next question is, I know somebody who has a very good memory. She remembers what she did exactly 5 years ago, what kind of weather was then, etc.
Right. Exactly.
But she has any interest in Dharma.
I understand
How is it possible? Could it be that she practiced shamatha all her past life?
Yeah, that's completely possible. Of course it is. I mean, I hear of some people like that. Or you hear of some people who are geniuses and you give them like a mathematical problem with about 60 digits in it and they can work it out in their head. They've clearly done some kind of meditation in the past, clearly done some kind of intelligence practice in the past, but you haven't got the whole package. You have no interest in carrying it on. That's for sure. That's very common. Yeah, it means the whole thing wasn't there. That's why you can have shamatha and not have it and get so and that's why you can get some people some people can concentrate very well and they get very addicted to it and think I'm so special, but they don't have any interest in Dharma. That's just going to turn you into some kind of idiot. It's not helpful. Go on. What else?
So that's the last question.
Okay,
it was also
we're done. Good. We're finished. Oh, more.
Is hell a place or a state of mind when the mind believes in its own obscurations?
Hell is a place, but so is the human realm. They're not okay. You know how they talk in science fiction, they talk about different dimensions. That's exactly what they mean by realms. Due to strong karma from past activities, we born in a bunch of other people looking like us who see the similar things, who see the ground and the moon and the stars. We've got a similar karmic appearance due to our similar karmic causes from the past. So we can't see certain other people what they see. Now you can even see that right now. Forget about hell. You've got a person who's completely out of their brain, who's going mad, who's hallucinating, who's seeing devils come out of people's eyes. That's real for them. They're seeing that's their karmic appearance. So a person who's in a hell realm, their karmic appearance due to negativity is this complete universe that their mind has created. So it is a place insofar as it's a mental state, but so is the human a mental state. They're all just mental states that come along with a certain level of physicality and come along with a certain level of environment. But it's all made by our minds from the past. It's all created by our minds from the past. It's all our own karmic appearance. Everything is made by the mind. So is Buddhahood. Minds create everything. And when we get embodied, we have some realms of existence like the humans and like the animals. We interact with each other. Spirits and hells, there's so much suffering mind, so much attachment, so much aversion, so much anger, so much rage, so much fear. There's appearance maybe of other beings, but there's no other beings. It's just your own mind living out what you have created, As Lama Yeshe said, hell is not some place where the devil is waiting, saying, ha ha, I'm waiting for Lama Yeshe. Hell is the manifestation of the negative energy of the past of that person. Everything is our own karmic appearance, and in many of us it includes an environment. So the way the environment manifests to us, due to our past actions. The way the people see us and treat us, due to our past actions. The way our mind works, due to our past actions. Even our own humanity, due to our past actions. Hell beings the same. Spirits the same. God realms the same. Every being that exists. All experiencing their own past actions, manifesting in front of them in different shapes and forms. This is proving emptiness. What else? That's it? Good way to end.
Well, there's another question, if you have time.
Go on.
How to help a person with dementia?
I understand. And we've not even talked much about the compassion wing of all because it didn't fit with our topic, But all this is the wisdom wing. Everything we talk about is the wisdom wing. This is how you put yourself together. This is how you become amazing and marvelous and stable and kind and wise and blissful and self-confident. Now you can help others. So person with dementia just means various parts of those third parts of our mind, I like to call them the mechanics of our mind, their ability to pay attention, their concentration, their good memory, their discrimination, all those bits that work together that we don't pay attention to, which is why we can do anything reasonably. They're all gone. They're all gone. They're lost. So how can you help that person? By loving them, by letting them hear mantras and pure sounds and prayers so that it blesses their mind. You make them safe, you make them secure, you make them feel loved and supported to alleviate their fear and their distress. That's how you help. You can't stop their thoughts from being the way they are, but you can give them really beautiful surroundings and a lot of peace and courage and support and love. That's the most precious way we can help all sentient beings. Does that make sense? So we done? Finished, Anastasia? What do you think? Time to go home? Okay. So next time we'll do the death book. Won't we? We're going to, when you're ready, Emma, you decide about that, yeah? Anastasia?
Yes, sure. Gladly, Venerable.
So I look forward to seeing you all again somewhere, somehow. Maybe I'll come to Moscow again one day. I'd like to do that.
And also, Venerable Robina, we want to thank you from the depth of our hearts.
Good, Andre.
And offer this kata symbolically as we, as it's possible,
Thank you. I receive it. All of you.
Yeah, thank you, yes. And also, we would like to offer a mandala if it's possible.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
A short one.
I will
you say
open
it.
the text.
You say it in Russian. So what we're going to do is, like we did in the beginning, we're going to offer all the marvelous things of the world to the Buddha as a thank you for the teachings. It's very auspicious. So pile up all the marvelous things and imagine offering to the Buddha as a thank you. Go on then. You say it in Russian for people. You say it in Russian.
Эту умащенную благовониями и покрытую цветами землю, великую гору Меру, 4 континента, солнце и луну я представляю, как поле Будды подношу. Да насладятся все существа-скитальцы жизнью в этой чистой земле. Идам гуру ратна мандалакам нирьятаями.
That's it. Wonderful. And the dedication, we'll just do it in our own words. Don't worry about the prayers. We'll do it in our own words. Just think. Take the prayers away. Oh, I see. You've got them there. Okay, we'll say the words then. Come on, say the words, please. So the first one is dedication. What it means is every single tiny thought we've had in this period together or today, nothing's gone astray. This should be very encouraging to us. Everything's gone into our minds. So also we've sowed seeds based on our motivation. So we think maybe we nourish these seeds we've planted from listening to all these teachings, thinking about their meaning, meditating, so that they will ripen in the future as our Buddhahood, no matter how long it takes. So we really can be a benefit to others, just like we motivated. And the second one, may this marvelous bodhicitta, which we never really talked about, may this marvelous aspiration to be a benefit to others, may it grow and grow in the hearts of all. Say in Russian.
В силу этой добродетели да достигну я быстро состояния гуру Будды и приведу всех без исключения существ-скитальцев к этому просветленному состоянию. Пусть драгоценная высшая бодхичитта, та, что не породилась, да породится, та, что породилась, да не ослабнет, но возрастает все больше и больше.
Okay, that's it. Goodbye. Thank you.
And maybe one very small
Put the prayers
note.
away so I can see you. Put the prayers away.
Okay, just a second.
Okay, go. I can see you now.
Yes.
Then, go on.
Yeah, so one very small note. I want to thank you from the depth of my heart, Venerable Robina, for being one of the first, maybe very first person who give teachings in our center back in like 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And this energy, still, alive and still make us flourish and, developing. So thank you so much
I'm
for
happy.
this.
So happy.
And
delighted. All right.
so we'll try our best to make it better.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm sure you all are. You're great, all of you. Keep moving. Never give up, no matter how many times. You fall down, pick yourself up. Fall down, pick yourself up. That's it. Never give up, okay? And thank you, Diana. So kind. Thank you so much. Making my words reasonable. Thank you, darling.
Yes, and
so kind.
If it's possible, I can also thank Alexey Mishalin,
Yes.
Yulia Kuznetsova, Katya Karpova, Katya Sky, and also for helping us,
Wonderful.
the translator and lots of people, volunteers who help make this
Yes.
course possible.
Exactly.
Thank you so
and
much.
Katya, all your kind questions, Katya. Thank you so much, Katya. And you, Anastasia, all of you, thank you. I really thank you. So this is a proof of dependent arising, isn't it? Everything's dependent arising, So thank you, everybody. Much love. And I'll see you sometime soon. Thank you. Bye, sweethearts.